welcome to
Yes.
this week's episode of Staying Sane with Jay and Hussein. I'm Jay, and my partner in crime is Hussein.
Yes.
So
Hi all.
this week we're going to change things up a little bit. Rather than just reporting the news, we've picked a handful of stories that we're going to discuss in more depth and detail. So jumping in this week, in the past few days, there was a vote in the UK Parliament over the right to die. It was sponsored by a Labour MP named Ledbetter.
Mhm.
I have invited her on the podcast, but I haven't received a response yet. So if anyone in the UK is watching, please reach out to Ms. Ledbetter and please ask her to come on our show so we can talk to her about this. So the issue in the UK, which did pass, was about the right to die for people who are suffering and are terminally ill. Now there were a lot of issues around this. There was great debate. There was opposition, obviously, from the religious folks, but also from people in the medical community. Um, there are like 6 or 7 countries in the world. Canada is one of them. I believe the Netherlands is another. There's
Mhm.
certain states in the U.S. that allow the right to die, but it's not universal across the United States. It's only within certain
Mhm.
states. So it's obviously a contentious issue. I mean, you have the whole, the religious, the sanctity of life because they think, we're created by God and therefore life is somehow sacred rather than we're
Mhm.
just, a part of nature and that people should be forced to suffer with terminal illnesses. Now, one of the issues in the UK was you have to be apparently within 6 months of a natural death. And some of
Mhm.
the people objecting to that are saying, well, I've already have a terminal disease. I'm in great pain. Why are you forcing me to live with this? Why are you forcing me to suffer and live on when I want to end my suffering because I'm not within 6 months? Canada, as I mentioned, Canada has this. So a friend of mine availed himself of this law a few years ago, back in
Mhm.
2017. So it's been about 7 years. He was the founder of an atheist community where I was living at the time, which is how I met him. He contracted ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. He did not want to be a burden on his family.
Mhm.
He moved back to Canada so he could take part in the right to die. Um, with ALS, like he couldn't move his hands. He had lost the right to speak. Not the right. He lost the ability to speak. He couldn't move. He did not want to be a burden. He didn't want to just be trapped in his head. And so he opted to end his life under a doctor's care in Canada.
Mhm.
Um, Hussein, what about in the India? Does India have a right to die?
Yeah, India obviously have a right to die, but it's in a different fashion. That is, we don't have this assisted or active euthanasia. We have a passive euthanasia, and in medical terms, we even call it as DNR. That is, do not resuscitate. That's what we usually call that. So DNR happens within the hospital facility when a patient suffering from some terminal illnesses or some serious injuries is taken to the ICU, and where the chances for a recovery is, if it is so low, then we just convince the bystanders and we just tell them that there's no point in this and this is the way forward. So it's not the patient or the person who is selecting or opting this way. So that's one way we do it. And other than that, we even have this passive euthanasia, which is the person can just go into some elderly homes and they just be there, and they just don't go for any treatments or any some take some treatments or for some diseases or something like that, and they just be there, end their life there. So it's not that dignified. If we say it in that manner, it's not much dignified form of a death. So there are some court rulings as well on this. And I think this has to be revised because it's not about a suicide. It's all about how you see your life, and if a person, whether he or she be in her youth, in their youth, or whether they are in the old age, or whether suffering from a disease or not, there should be an option if they wish to do such a thing. So in India, we don't have active euthanasia. That's in one word what I can say on this. But we have some news from Netherlands where almost in May we saw such a news from Netherlands where a 29-year-old, a Dutch woman who opted for this active euthanasia, ending her life, because she was suffering from chronic depression, anxiety, trauma, and unspecified personality disorders. So this was something that she posted on Twitter, and she was mentioning about that, and there was a lot of discussion going on that. Have you come across that? Such a
I've
news?
heard it because like Canada was looking to expand the right to die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there was a lot of pushback like, because apparently they were expanding it to like allow people who were suffering from depression. And so what I mean, I looked into this a couple of years ago, but not in any detail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that there was a lot of pushback because this is not about somebody who has a terminal disease. This is just somebody who's suffering from depression or a mental
Mm-hmm.
illness, and then allowing them to end. Now, granted, people who are suffering from depression are suffering, but they don't have a terminal disease that is going to kill them within a few
Mm-hmm.
months. That's causing them great pain. Their pain is coming from their emotional well-being,
Mm-hmm.
the biochemical, biochemicals in the brain that are affecting their lives. Something like I'm sure quite a few of us in our lives we've experienced depression or severe sadness, and we've contemplated wanting to end the pain. So I get it. I can
Mm-hmm.
get why. I had a friend who committed suicide a few years ago. Um, he had been talking openly about it for quite a number of months, if not years, that he was going to end his life, and he did. Just one
Mm-hmm.
night he just drank a case of beer, went up to the roof of his apartment and jumped. Which I don't
Yeah.
think that's necessarily fair to the person who finds the body, like to do it in such a fashion as that. You have,
Mm-hmm.
to me, the people who are really selfish, like the people who cause car accidents, like they drive into oncoming traffic, like that. That to me, that's yes, you're ending your life, but you're creating, a whole lot of trouble for the
Chaos.
other
Yeah.
people. Like I think that's really, really selfish.
Even you can
And I,
kill other people in
yeah.
that course. Yeah.
And even if you don't kill them, like what are you doing to their mental well-being that you've done this to them, that they've been involved in this fatal accident with you? Like that's gonna fuck up their lives. So I think it's only justified to be critical of um, that mentality that if you want to take yourself out, okay, I'm not going to stop you, but do it quietly where you're not impacting other people.
Yeah.
Like jumping off a
But
roof, like you could land on somebody, you're hurting them, or the person who finds you. Like what are you doing to the psyche of the person who finds your mangled body? Like that's got to be, you know, catastrophic for their mental well-being.
don't you think that there's a an evolving or a drastically changing view on this quality of life perspective?
There is, and that goes to my first point about the
Mm,
religious ideology that life is somehow sacred because God has created us. So I think
mm,
as
mm.
as religion is declining, that whole like life is the sanctity of life argument is losing
Yeah.
steam.
Mm.
Um, I have a
Subjective.
living will. I have a
Yeah.
living will that says, in case of a catastrophic accident, I don't want to be kept alive by machines. Just let me go.
Mm. Yeah.
My wife and I
Even.
talk about it. Like, my wife is worried. Like, my wife has fears of the afterlife, and she asks me, like, "Aren't you worried?" I'm like, "No, I have no fear
Yeah.
of an afterlife because there is no afterlife. There's just nothingness. So I won't even know that I'm dead.
Yeah.
Maybe going into it, I will be aware of how I'm dying. Like if I've been injured and I can feel the life force ebbing away, or if it's a sudden catastrophic accident that I maybe have a split second to react. Like I don't know, but none of us know.
Mm.
Um, but like, there's the quote by Epicurus. It's actually quite common at secular funerals. So
Mm.
Epicurus was the I think third or fourth century BCE Greek philosopher
Mm.
who was very critical of the priesthood and superstition and denying the soul. And he wrote, "I was not,
Mm.
I was, I am not, I do not care." And so
Mm.
to me, that speaks to me because yeah, like when I'm dead, I'm not going to know it. Like I have no conscious memory of before my birth. I will have no consciousness after my birth. This
Mm.
whole idea of an afterlife is just trying to project our consciousness, because people can't deal with the void. Like they just cannot
Yeah.
comprehend
So
that, their consciousness will end. So
so that's a paradigm shift, which signals people moving away from religious dogmas and the kind of sanctity that it was nurturing while viewing what a life is and all. So in that way, I think there will be more focus on subjective wellness, individuality, and all such things. And governments will have to spend more on this welfare activities, which will ensure a graceful aging and to stop such crippling diseases like bedridden patients or people. Nobody likes to be bedridden at their end of their life. So if they are soon to become in a patient such in burden in such a way, they will. There's a chance that they will choose for ending their life in this way. So I think that that will be a
Mm.
complication for the governments as well.
Yeah. And as I said, like it's only like 6 or 7 countries in the world and a handful of US states. Like it's
Mm.
obviously not widespread. Um, there was
But in the
something a few
future,
weeks ago. Yeah, there was something a few weeks ago, like somebody in Switzerland had
mm.
developed like a death pod. Like you climb into the pod and like for
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know the mechanism, but I mean, yeah, it's coming. Like, and I think I don't want to suffer. If it's
Mm.
me, I want the right to end my life, and I wouldn't take that right away from anybody else. If you're
Mm.
suffering, it's not up to anybody else to tell you that you must live in this pain and discomfort. If
Yeah.
if you want to go, that should be your choice. That should be a fundamental
So
human right. Like if you're suffering, nobody should tell you you have to live.
so throughout all these statements that while we were making, everything was around the disease, the sufferings, and all. But there is another aspect to this. That is, there are. I think there was a news a few months ago where a couple they were planning to die peacefully. They were not suffering from any diseases or anything. They were just saying that we have accomplished everything in our life. There's no purpose in living anymore. So we want to lie. We want to die. That's what they were saying. So this also will be a problem. That's what I'm saying. So in that way, this is a complicated
Yeah,
issue. Yeah,
there,
in the
there needs to
future.
be there have to be some guardrails and
Yeah.
some safety measures put in place that people who are just
Mm.
depressed, can't
Yeah.
check out, I mean, they're going to do it if they're really depressed and they're going to, they'll take their own life anyways. And it's tragic and it's certainly hurts the people who are left behind. Like I knew
Yeah.
I knew some friends of mine who their father had committed suicide, and I saw the impact that that had on them, and especially their ability to be in relationships with men.
Mm.
That it really affected them that their dad had taken their own life, and yet to some degree, I understand the argument that suicide is a selfish act, but at the same time, if you really can't take it anymore,
Mm.
I understand the impetus, but I can also see the impact that it has on the people you leave behind when you do that.
But
So,
yeah, but don't you think that if there is an option to end life like that officially, legally, that will give a chance for
to say
that
goodbye.
person.
Yeah.
No, that person to address the issue, to for another person to check into that and to say or to even suggest a plan for coming out of that, and maybe they can go back to their life.
Yeah.
So right now, what's happening is there's no such a mechanism where the sufferings can be subjective sufferings which is not accountable, which is not amounting to a kind of mental disease or some physical disease. The person is suffering internally without any manifestations, and he's not able to express it properly. But only thing what he wishes to do is to go and die. So in that way, if there's a legal mechanism, and if
Yeah.
that person approaches that body or that process, and there's a point in that process where the exact reasons has to be explained, and that will give a chance for that person to sort it out if there is
Yeah.
a minor chance at
Well,
least.
that
So
goes to my point about having guardrails, right? If you
yeah,
have, if the medical doctors and
multiple.
psychologists and
Yeah.
psychiatrists, if they have to sign off on it, then
Mm.
yes, if you approach them and say, I want to end my life, and then you enter counseling, maybe they'll get the help they need. So, um,
So in that way, even we can bring down the actual number of suicides that's happening today. Don't you think
right.
that way?
I did, I, th this may be rather cynical of me, but I've observed this more than once.
Hmm.
I don't see it so much here where I am, but in like I used to live in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is a very high pressure society. It's very expensive to live there. It's like the highest cost of living
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. Like it consistently ranks in the top. It's as first most expensive city in the world, or within the say the top three.
Mm.
Um, and I've seen a few times where people have. I, I I loathe to use the word faking
Mm.
a suicide attempt. Like they'll climb up onto a bridge or a building. You know, it's a cry for help. Yes, it's a cry
Mm.
for help, but to me, it seems I'm approaching this from the outside, not as an inside information, but what I've seen, as we all know, psychological help or psychiatric help is expensive. Like, it's not covered by most insurance plans, if any insurance plans, like
But if this
other
happens,
medicals.
it
But,
it goes free.
if you need a psychiatrist or a psychologist, like it can be like several, $50 or more,
Mm.
and up per hour. Like most people can't afford to get that
Mm.
psychological help. And
Got your
so
point.
while I see it's kind of a jaded and cynical view that I can see how people would fake a suicide attempt to get the psychological help that they need. That they climb up onto a building and then the police and the medical community come or the emergency services come and talk you down, and then you get put into a government-sponsored healthcare program where they get the help they need. But it's pretty sad that they have to go to that level of
That's
desperation
right.
just to get the help they need. I knew a friend of mine, she was a friend, and she actually shared office space with my company
Mm-hmm.
in Hong Kong years ago. And she had been president of an insurance company. And I asked her one day, like, why, our physical health is tied to our mental health. And if you're suffering mentally, it's going to have manifestations in your physical health. So why then would insurance companies not cover this? Because there's going to be knock-on effects. Like if you're suffering mentally, you're definitely going to have physical manifestations as well that's going to cost the insurance companies money. So why not treat the mental? I
Mm.
don't remember what her answer was, but it was not satisfying to me anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so usually some people will come up with some arguments like religion or religious teachings is the best way to stop suicidal thoughts. That's one way by which they try to promote the religions. So even we are getting some comments over here, some Arabic texts. So I just got reminded of that. Even Prophet Muhammad once tried to commit a suicide. How many of the believers know that? So that's a cool story that Muhammad, in his early period of revelations and all, he was expecting a lot of revelations. But soon after, one of his uncles who died, and he was the key person in his life who was giving him the hints for the revelations, which was purportedly called as revelations, in fact, which was his fanciful imaginations. And Prophet himself was suffering from temporal lobe epilepsy and some other depression, and he was suffering from some childhood trauma because for being an orphan. So these were the childhood traumas that he was carrying, and he was having this incident in his life where he was totally abandoned. So people started mocking him. Where, Muhammad? Where's your revelations? You are not coming up with any new verses and all. So what? At the end, what he did was he climbed onto the highest peaks over there, that's mountains over there, and he tried jumping from that. That's how he tried committing suicide because there was no other big buildings or something during that period. So he opted for this. So you can just imagine, even those people who are within the religion, who are the heads of the religion and who are called as the God men, they are also suffering some psychiatric diseases, disorders, and emotional imbalances and other things which can harm their life. But there's no mechanism in the place, and even the governments are not actively involving in that, right? Just what you said right now from the experiences in Hong Kong. This is what do you say, so disheartening. It's not something that is good to hear, and what we can expect the people should go through, like as a suffering that it's adding on to their suffering because you have a problem and you are not able to address it. That's even more burdening. So I think more and more countries should come up, because when you said that 7 countries are already having this assisted death, it's just 7 countries. We have more than 200 countries. I hope so. So more countries should come forward, legalize, or they should come up with some ways which will help people stop suiciding. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So we'll have to
Okay.
wait and see what happens over the next decade as more and more
Yeah.
countries adopt these, and we'll have to watch and see what happens in the UK. Obviously,
Mm,
there's more discussion as planned. It did pass in Parliament. However, there's more discussion needed, and then it will end up going to the House of Lords, where, as many
mm,
people who are aware know, that
mm.
Anglican bishops sit in the House of Lords. So the bishops are likely to vote it down in the UK, as is, unless the bishops, and there are bills to get the bishops out of the House of Lords, which should probably happen too. So maybe we
So,
can get them out before this bill goes. So
so at the mercy of the
okay,
religion, we
yeah,
can leave it. Okay.
yeah. So let's wait and see. So moving on to our next topic.
Yeah. Next
Okay.
topic is um, totally based on the atrocities against the minorities all over the world. So for that, we have selected a few countries. That is, one is from Syria, and the second is from Bangladesh, my neighboring country. Then we have Pakistan. So these three countries, which we now talk about regarding the minorities who is getting affected. So if you go into Syria, which came to the news headlines very recently after a a faction over there that is a new not a new organization, something which we were not much familiar with, but they were part of the ISIS itself. That is the HTS. So uh, they stand for, what do you say, the exact um name mentions. Uh, they are for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. That's the full form of HTS. That means Islamic rule for the Lebanon or the Sham. Sham means Syria. That's what they call it. So Islamic State for Syria. That's their goal. So now uh, Assad, Assad regime is in trouble now because this new faction of Islamic troops, they are now charging against him, taking control of the towns and the cities, and they are now creating havoc across the country over there. And even now, Iran is coming into the playground. Russia is involving, and all other countries are there. And Israel is now fearing their borders getting infiltrated with or spilling of this extremist elements from this Syria to Israel and even causing more problems in their country as well. So in that Middle East region, the whole thing is getting heated up. And within that, the one community, that is the Christian community in the Syria, they are now targeted. We saw a lot of press reports and videos and images circulating all over the internet, which clearly depicts how the churches were attacked, the statues and the books and other things getting smashed and thrown out onto the ground and being beaten, stamped over, and all such things. So that's the picture from the minority issues that is happening from Syria. Now, when it comes to Bangladesh, we have a large Hindu population in Bangladesh getting affected. I think we had mentioned about this in our past episodes as well. But now, when we look at Bangladesh, very recently we saw a few temples at getting attacked again and again. So this attack over the Hindu population, targeting their temples and arresting some of the seers of Hindu ISKCON temple and other some of such organizations over there, that's now uh, giving a signal that the minorities are not safe, the Hindus are not safe in Bangladesh. And the major problem or the major or the sad part in this is that the world, the whole world, the international community is still silent over this. The UN is not properly responding to this. And we had sent one representation to the UN to look into the atrocities against the minorities, and we had signed such a report. You might be remembering that. So Hindus are the target, the minorities in Bangladesh. So even there's a ISKCON temple seer who got arrested, and one of the lawyers who represented him in the court, he was attacked and he was killed just for representing this,
defending.
yeah, representing him. So this is the situation in Bangladesh. And now coming to Pakistan, that's the third country where we are seeing the atrocities against the minority, but this time it's not the Hindus or the Christians, but the Shias. But the problem is they are also another faction of Islam. So Shias getting targeted by the Sunnis. And in the last 10 days, we have seen almost 130 Shias getting killed by deliberate shooting attacks over them. The pilgrimage, their convoys of pilgrims, they were getting attacked, firings, rounds of fires, and they were killed. And more than 200 people wounded, and they are in hospitals getting treatment and other things. So even now, when you look at that, there's a kind of a dual standard where we are not seeing the deserved attention from the international community against the atrocities which is committed on the minorities. So here the problem is, if the attack is done by the one group, and if that group is not a Jew, not a Hindu, or not a someone from the elite class, which we call, then that attack is not talked about. Then that attack is just forgotten. Then it is just spared from discussions. That's what is happening in this world. So I think we need to speak over this. That's my personal opinion. And we need to, I'm not saying that we should balance everything, but if you are against attacks over minorities, especially the religious extremists doing all these things, in all these cases, we are seeing the same kind of people. In Syria, we have the Islamic extremists. In Bangladesh, we have the Jamaat Islami, and in Pakistan, we have the same group, the Sunni extremists, who are doing the same thing. And we are silent over this. The world is silent over this. I'm just taking three countries. We have even more. We have the usual atrocities against the minorities that is happening in the Sahel region in Africa. That is Boko Haram and some other JNIM. They are also doing their part well, pretty well, killing more number of people, trying to reduce the population. Maybe that's their goal. Anyway, we have to discuss this, and this is the plight of the minorities in this world, in many countries. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be more media coverage over what's going on, especially in Bangladesh. Like, you've had this transitional government with Yunus coming in, and yet there's
Mm,
all of this crackdown on opposition. So, like, this guy, a lot of Bangladeshis are saying that, Yunus is seriously corrupt. Like, he won the Nobel for creating the microfinance and banking, but he's been accused of corruption. He's allowing these attacks on minorities and crack down on freedom of speech. So, like, where is this guy's morality? If
mm,
he's supposedly, like, he was basically acclaimed to the presidency, like, by the protesters. He wasn't
mm.
elected, and yet
Oh, yeah.
no one's holding him accountable for the violence that's being perpetrated against the minority. So I think that's
Mm,
that's a shame. Like, why isn't the UN doing more? Like, can't we send in UN peacekeepers to help stabilize the situation in these countries, like in
mm,
Pakistan, to stop the tax on the Shias, in Bangladesh until the government can get a handle on things, if they even intend to. The government doesn't seem to be even inclined to get a handle on things. They seem to be happy to just to let it escalate.
yeah, the situation is getting worse in the bordering states of India as well. That is in the West Bengal. What we are seeing right now is that in Bangladesh, the cities over there in Dhaka, you are seeing Indian flag getting placed on the ground, and people spitting over that and doing all such things because they just wanted to show the hate towards the Hindus. And what is happening in West Bengal, in Kolkata and other places, is that they are just placing Bangladesh flag on the ground, pasting the photographs of the now this president or the Yunus, and the posters are asking, "Spit on me, stamp on me," like that. So this is the kind of reaction or the kind of protest that is happening among the people in both the sides. And what is it creating? In fact, it's creating enmity, it's creating hate, and this is gonna perpetuate if no proper international engagement is brought into this, and there is a something is to be done at the earliest. And I think there's another issue which is stopping India from engaging too much into this. That's what I see here. That is, India now led by the BJP government, and the issue in Bangladesh where Hindus are targeted. And if they do something for saving the Hindus, that will again amplify the Hindu image of BJP. So I think they are now too cautious to not to intervene too early, not to intervene too much. This is the thing that we are seeing here. So I think that's a crime that Indian government is doing, because they have to talk on this. They have to bring this into the international arena, into the UN, and do whatever they can and to speak on this and to bring international attention and to solve this problem. But they are even waiting for, I don't know what they are waiting for, but the reality is even the people on both the sides are now getting engaged, not just the troops on the other side. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Going out of
it'd be
hand.
nice. It'd be nice to see a little more international pressure to
Mm,
to to stop these atrocities and bring the secular rule of law back in, especially in Bangladesh. So, but
right,
time will tell. I mean, obviously there doesn't seem to be the political will to act on the part of
right.
many countries. So I don't know. I don't know what the UN is waiting for. So maybe they've got a maybe they have a special, rep. I don't know. I can't even pronounce rapporteur or whatever that word is. The UN special reporter that goes in and studies these things in detail. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they've commissioned a study. So
Mm.
maybe they're just waiting to.
Yeah, we had sent one representation to UN to wrote to UN for this setting an inquiry commission on this atrocities against these minorities. Did we get any reply from them, or are we
Not that
expecting anything?
I don't know. I haven't wasn't part of that, so I can't
Oh,
say.
okay. I haven't received any mail or something as a forward.
No,
Maybe let's expect some good news from the UN very soon.
that would be nice. So
Yeah, if it happens.
yeah.
Okay.
All
So,
right. All
okay.
right. So I guess that wraps up this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed our new format where we talk a little more in depth on a couple of issues rather than just reporting the surface of all the issues. So let us know what you like in the comments, and we'll see
Right.
everybody next week. All right. Take care,
Peace
everybody.
out. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.